Hello and welcome to day one of database-driven web development. I am Jim Kaufman with Rankin Technical College, and I will be your instructor for this course. Today we will be this will be more of an introduction, and we'll kind of just go over some of the basics of this course. And a couple areas that some of the students that have been in my previous courses, some new stuff. There'll be a little bit different in this course, so kind of want to touch up upon that a little bit. Okay, let's get started on that. So I'm going to go ahead and just do it quick. There'll be a little overlap. I did a welcome video, just a little bit of overlap. Not too much. Most of it'll be new things we'll go over here, but just kind of wanted to go over a couple things in case somebody didn't see that video. And like I said, there's a couple new students in here that haven't had me before, so they don't know anything about me. So kind of I'll just do a quick little instructor introduction. And I'm going to go ahead and do a course introduction. This course is the continuation, so to speak, of the web technologies course, which was basically about HTML, CSS, JavaScript, etc. So this is kind of taking this to the next level, and actually to maybe next couple levels. Okay, so it's just going to take this. You're going to learn a lot more. It's going to become a lot more in depth. So that'll be good. Do want to mention there's a little higher expectations for second year coursework. Usually the first year, especially those first year courses, a brand new student could start at either one of those, courses at any time. So, usually in some cases that's the first course for someone. So, I'm much more lenient on things than I generally will be in this course. Just want to point that out. And I'm going to go in depth in some of these other areas here, but just kind of going over a few things here. So summer classes are different, a little different. They're a little shorter, more concise. The summer course is 70 days as opposed to 80 days, so it's a little more condensed. We still need to kind of cover the same material, so it's a little bit more condensed. It shouldn't be too bad, but just wanted to point that out. So you need to really be cognizant of your schedule and your time that you're contributing to this course. I'm going to just mention a little bit about work ethic again. Want to talk a little bit about career development and your web portfolio. Really want to kind of make sure that you're constantly spending a little time here and there thinking about things, making some progress and getting things set up for you can get a position somewhere. Also, we'll go ahead and go through the syllabus, and also the main page as well. There's a lot on that main page that's very beneficial for you in this course. And so I want to go through that. Also want to talk about the final project early on here, because the final project is actually an accumulation of the other work that you've done. So there'll be some of these labs that you'll be doing through this course. Well, these labs are going to be part of that final project. And then when you get towards the end of the semester, you're going to be enhancing all of that to get to your final project, to get to that final course, the final coursework for submission. And also during this course, I'm also going to do my own instructor project. I'm going to be doing my own project. I'm not going to be just doing the same thing you're doing. Okay. I'm going to be creating my own project. And I kind of want to do like an interview preparation quiz application. And during that, I'm going to kind of talk about the process a possible process, just how when you're in the real world working at a job, how things may, some of the terminology, some of the processes, and some of the ways of thinking that will go into how applications get built and that. So I kind of want to spend a little time working while I'm working through this, my own individual project, discussing those things to kind of give you a little more insight, and I think it'll be helpful for you in the future. I'm going to go ahead and review setting up the environment a little bit. A lot of it's you pretty much have already. You should have all, it's pretty, it's similar. We got GitHub and, we're using Git and GitHub in the classrooms and stuff. So there's a few new things, but pretty much the same. Also want to kind of talk about Git options to use Git in this course. Now we've for the most part, students in this course have already used GitHub Desktop, and towards the end of the web technology course, we also did the commit command line. There's also an application, and these aren't the only ones, but these are three of the more popular ways to do it. GitHub Desktop, and there's this Tortoise Git, and it's integrated with your file system, and it's another option for you. So I want to kind of show you the different options that are available, and I really do suggest that you kind of work on the command line if you feel comfortable with that as much as possible, because there's always other things. We're going to be using the command line for a lot of stuff in this course, for the React and the Node and all these things we'll be doing in this course. And so it's kind of the command line's very used a lot within different companies and when you're working on different software projects. So it's probably good to kind of get used to that as much as possible. So go through that a little bit here today. I do want to talk about using AI in this course. Now that we're at the second year, there's tools that you can use to help you. And so we're going to talk about that. And then also, besides just tools for coding, related tools for coding assistant, AI can be done, used for other things as well. And actually part of my project that I was going to be working on, my instructor project, I'm going to go ahead and use probably like an AI agents, where I will have an agent go ahead and take care of something, and I'll show you the code on that. Now, some of this AI stuff, besides the code assistant stuff, I'm not sure. Currently, the assignments don't really have AI, but besides just using the code, the assistant, really integrate it. But if I can find a way to get that in there somehow, I will. But when I go ahead and do this instructor project, I will be using that. So I'll at least show you that at a minimum, so you can kind of understand what's going on with that. And then if time permits, and I don't really think we will, I'm going to start going over so what we kind of do in this course, especially because some students that could be in this course that haven't had the web technologies in a while, they may have taken web technologies first. Then they took the C# class, and then maybe after the C# class, they took the .NET class, and then now they're in, this is their last course, and so they didn't take, they haven't haven't done any JavaScript in quite a while. It could have been the very first course. So we kind of going to go ahead and go through some basics of JavaScript. There'll be some assignments for just some written test and so forth, and a little bit of assignments just for some of the basic JavaScript. Now, this course in general, though, does expand on JavaScript. You will be using, JavaScript is the main function. You'll be doing a lot more JavaScript in this course than you did in the Web Technologies course. But so we want to kind of just really, more of a review, and even for people who have taken it, maybe there's some areas that you didn't really understand. So we want to kind of review some of those areas to help you so you can take the next step as far as JavaScript's concerned. So, okay, so let's do a little quick instructor introduction here. So my name's Jim Kaufman. as far as my experience, I've been with Rankin a couple years now. So I'm not a lifelong instructor. Some instructors have been teaching here for many years. I'm more of a, I was more in the field, so to speak, as far as in the real world programming. So I had about 18 years working as a software developer for different companies and also for government projects. And I did a little bit of project management related stuff as well. And also I should, I guess, mention part of that software development. I wasn't always just, there's different roles and stuff. I did do a little work as a solutions architect, but most of it was coding related. But after that, I did a few things, a few different other positions that I wasn't doing a lot of coding. Okay, I was kind of like helping out others more than anything else. So about 18 years experience there, and a couple years in as far as managing a little bit of project management stuff. As far as education, I've as far as degrees and so forth, I had a certificate in web development from St. Louis University, and this is back in like 2000. So quite a while back ago. Yes, I'm old. So it's quite a while back ago. And I got a BA in business management kind of in the late 90s. So, but also actually in that business management class, I did actually, there's a lot of different elective classes. I did a lot of computer elective type stuff. And even before that, I did do a bunch of community college computer classes as well. So I've actually been interested in computers for a lot longer than maybe the education reflects. So I did do I did have a pretty substantial computer background. But besides that, really, I've been to a lot of seminars, a lot of different online courses, and a bunch of different certifications. And actually, a couple of these have expired. I need to remove them from here. And a couple of them I had before that I don't have anymore that I already removed. But I've worked on a lot of different certifications. So I was more of like a Java programmer, which is, not related to JavaScript. JavaScript actually kind of took that name. It was kind of a marketing thing. That's why they call it JavaScript. Java was very popular when JavaScript started. So, but I got a certification in Java programming many years ago. A couple years after I started programming, I got a certificate in it was a certification in Java programming. They have them now, but this one it doesn't have the latest stuff. So that's kind of an older certification. And then obviously I have some project management professional certification and many of the other ones on there. The AWS is Amazon Web Services. Them are cloud related, and Azure also cloud. So them are some cloud related ones. A lot of those certifications were more for. I did do some work in cloud, but a lot of them, I work for consulting firms, contracting firms, where they wanted to have their people have this certification so they could say, we have this many people have certifications. So some of that stuff I didn't use as much as I would have liked to use. A lot of it was kind of more for my company's marketing, so they could say that we have all these people that are certified in these areas, right? So, but as far as getting started, kind of in the late 90s, I was, working in an office part-time and kind of noticed that on their, the computers they had there, it was earlier days of internet. I didn't even know, when I started there, and even my boss didn't even know that they had internet on the computers. They used them in other ways. And so kind of just started looking at websites, got really interested. Kind of interested. Wow, I wonder how they made this and made that. And I started viewing the source, right click and view source. And I started learning how to create a little bit of HTML and CSS and JavaScript. Them were early days. It was much more rudimentary than nowadays. You can do things, what you can do now is far surpassed what I could do back then. But I just started learning a few things, and I said, this is a job. I could get into doing this in a job, and I just started doing some research and finding out that there's a lot of jobs that were available in this area. So I ended up looking for some educational programs that because I just got done with college. I didn't want to do another 4-year degree, and I don't want to say stumbled. I found this certification through St. Louis University for web development. And so I went ahead and it was kind of a thing where I attended a couple of nights every week and plus every other Saturday for like 8 hours. It was a condensed thing. But I ended up being in that course and kind of a story on how I actually got my first job. And I like to tell this just because, it's an important to realize that a lot of people get jobs from people they know and being in certain circumstances and through network connections. And so I was actually in this class, this program, and one of the other students in this program was a manager at A.G. Edwards, which was a stock brokerage company that was downtown St. Louis, which is now it's now Wells Fargo. Wells Fargo bought them. But I was in class with this manager, and he was in there also, I sat close, next to him. I sat, I guess, a couple seats away from him, so I knew him. And one thing is I was always there early. And I was helping out some of the other students at times, and I actually helped out him as well. And all that really paid off for me because like the last day of class, he said, "Hey, just wanted to mention to you if you're interested, I got a job for you as a junior programmer at A.G. Edwards." So that was the beginning of my career in software development, and that's how things got started for me. So just kind of wanted to share that with you, and especially like I said, it's really important to work on those network. Maybe you don't know a lot of people in software development or those areas, but you do know people that work at different companies, and just having some contacts, and some of us are more outgoing than others, and even if you're more introverted, don't mean that you can't still work on some of those network connections as well, right? So very important. All right. So as far as this course goes, it's called Database Driven 1 course. That's more of kind of a general description. It's basically really to be more precise. This course is basically about what's called the MERN stack, and the MERN stack is a set of basically 4 different technologies. It's a MongoDB for the M for MongoDB, E for Express, R for React, and N for Node. Okay, and so really it's a very the MERN stack's a powerful JavaScript-based set of technologies used for building full stack web applications. Okay. So when we say full stack, what we're talking about there is we're talking about, like in the web technologies course, we just did basically front end type stuff, HTML, CSS, our Bootstrap, our JavaScript, and we did do a little bit of React stuff towards the end, but React's all front end stuff as well. So that's all our front end, that's all the front end. But the MERN is more also having a database and also having some back end code where you would send a request, click a button on a web page, it's going to make a request, right? And it's going to make a request to this back end, which would be like your Express, right? So Express is a minimal and flexible node web application framework, okay? And so that would be part of the back end part of things, okay? And then that Express would actually route requests to your database and vice versa, okay? And the database would come back with a response, and it would pass that back to your front end, right? And we're going to go into this a lot more detail. Just kind of wanted to give you a quick overview. What the MERN stack is. It's basically a a full stack. It's basically a full stack technology, it's made up of MongoDB, Express, React, and Node. Now, real quick, you'll hear some other ones as well. You'll hear Mean, MEAN, and all it is substituting what's called Angular for React. Angular is used much more in the enterprise as opposed to, and we'll talk about that. I really need to go into detail with you guys about that real soon here. Not today, but when we talk about enterprise, what that kind of really means. But Angular is used more in the enterprise. It's a little harder in React. Obviously, if you know React, Angular will be a little easier for you, but it's quite a bit different as well. But that's all. If you ever heard of the Mean stack, all it is replacing Angular with React. Okay, or replacing React with Angular. Now there's other stacks as well, and we'll touch upon them later on as well. But for this course, we're basically just talking about the MERN stack. Okay, and just to add on here, always remember that Node.js is not coding. It's not a library. It's called a runtime environment. Okay, it's a runtime environment. It's built on Chrome's V8 JavaScript engine. Right. So you look at Node as being basically the engine that runs your application. Okay. Now, I'll try not. I don't want to go too deep into this, but basically, when you kind of create a React app, you use Node pretty much in your development environment to help you use like that. And for there's some students in here you've already done a little bit of this. Some of the other students may have not, because you might not have done any. We did a couple different React assignments just to kind of get them introduced to it. But when you're creating React in a development environment using Node.js, but really when it runs, you're not. When React runs, it's running in the browser. It's running within that Chrome's V8 JavaScript engine in the browser, right? Or any other kind of JavaScript engine that it's a different browser than Chrome, right? But it's running in the browser, your React code. Now Express, though, on the other hand, Express is actually running in a Node environment on the back end. Okay, but always keep that in mind that Node is a runtime environment. It's not a coding technology. It's not JavaScript. It's basically a runtime environment. But we're going to touch upon all these things, in much more detail because we'll be using all of these technologies, and then some. So, okay, do want to kind of go through this a little bit. I did mention this in my welcome video, but just spend a little bit of time on this. Like I said, this is a full stack. The MERN stack is a full stack, right? So this course can help you prepare for a job as a full stack developer. Okay. And, it just depends on the companies. Some companies like what would be called more of a generalist, right? A generalist where you know how to do all parts of the stack, all parts of the application from front end to back end, right? When I was earlier in my career, what they called that was, years ago, they called that end-to-end development. Do you know how to do end-to-end development, right? That's what they called it. Nowadays, it's called full stack development, right? That you can work on any part of the stack. And so that, so this course will kind of help you in this area to kind of prepare for a possible job in the area. And then also there's the idea of just being a front-end developer. And a front-end developer is, in this case, right? Now, I'm not saying that all front-end developers only use React. There's other frameworks and so forth, right? There's other frameworks. But from the perspective of this course, we're using React. So for our front end, we're using React, and React is one of the most popular front end frameworks there are. Or actually, it's considered a library. So, and we'll talk about the difference between a library and a framework later. But a React is basically a front end development library, and it's focused on building the user interfaces, right? But obviously, even if you just end up with being a front end developer with React, right? Understanding all the other parts of the stack, the MERN stack, is only going to help you that much more, right? Understanding all those parts of that. So that's a front end developer, and then some companies just because, like I said, some companies they want kind of full stack developers who can do anything, and then other companies might have things broken up differently, right? It all depends on the organization and even the project. Sometimes it may be a small project. Well, we just want a front end full stack developer because this is a small project. We want somebody who can do everything, right? And usually that's one of the determining factors. If you've got a huge project, big project, multi-million-dollar projects at a company, sometimes they want to have people that have the special skills, right? Who are more versed in each skill. Because obviously, when you're doing that, if you got somebody who's really concentrated, they're going to be a lot better. It's hard for someone to be really, really good at everything, right? Usually someone's going to have their specialty, right? So if you're in a big project, there might be you might be in a situation where there's going to be a front end developer, a back end developer, and you might also have a database developer as well. Okay. So just kind of wanted to point that out. These are some specific jobs that are kind of associated with this with this course. All right. Let's see. What did I want to cover here next? Okay, we'll go ahead and go on the slide here. So how to succeed in this course. And like I said, this was kind of already in the welcome video. I just kind of want to reiterate this. This is a 14 credit hour course. So, a significant commitment of your time is necessary to do well. And like I mentioned earlier, this summer semester for this course is 70 days as opposed to 80 days. So this is a 14-week course. And so to succeed in this course, it's a good rule of thumb to dedicate around 25 hours per week. Obviously, you might need less time, or some students might need more time, right? Especially maybe if you have to brush up more on your JavaScript skills, and it might take you a little longer to come up to speed. Especially early on, you may need to spend a little more time, right? But as this course goes, some of the material become a little more complex too. You may get away with, spending a little less time at the beginning, but as time goes on in this course, you may need to invest more time. Okay, so make sure you create a plan and stick with it. Read your handouts and spend time looking at some of the documentation. This course does not have a book, right? So you don't have to worry about books for this course, and but you still need to read on. You spend some time reading, learning as you go. Each of these technologies, React, Express, Node, has a website with documentation. Reading that. Also on the main page of the course, there's documentation and different information in there as well. So, even though there's not a book, doesn't mean you don't need to read, okay? So keep that in mind. And don't be afraid to ask for help if you need any help, But obviously, the expectations are, you get to the second year courses, expectation, you need to try to work through things yourself, don't... and I'm always here to help. I wouldn't yell at you or get after you. I might mention, but if you're not really spending time to learn what you need to learn, and you're asking some basic questions, then I might bring that up to you. Hey, well, you probably really should understand that. I'll help you, but you really should understand that. So you need to be, self-reliant, when you get a job at a company. And like I said, I'm not trying to push you away and you're going to, receive bad marks because you asked for help. So, I'm here to help you. But, you get a job somewhere, you can't always be running around trying, obviously they're going to tell you to ask for help, but there's going to become a time actually starting, they're going to help you a lot, right? But as time goes on, you need to figure some things out. Every time you come up with some new challenge at your job, you need to try to investigate that. You need to look at some documentation, try to work through that as much as possible on your own. Okay, so and this course, you need to try to start doing that as well. If many students already have, but just kind of wanted to kind of emphasize that it's important to do your own due diligence and try to work through your own problems first, okay? And then if you can't, and I know some of this technologies can be a little more challenging than this first year courses, but so just want to kind of mention that. And most of all, don't give up. This is really all about effort. If you have the basic technical skills, which I know everybody in this course already does, because I pretty much know it, and I know, I know one student, he's already been this is his last course, so he's already been through 3 courses. So I know for him to get to this point, he's got the technical skills, right? So as long as you got the technical skills and you're willing to put into work, just keep at it. You can do this. It's all about effort then, right? If you got the technical skills, it's all about effort after that. Okay, let's see. Do want to touch on the work ethic grade just a little bit. I know it's not the same as how it is in a in-person class, but this is always something that their ranking administration is always trying to is always wants to point out, because this is an important part of Rankin's philosophy, the work ethic, and so part of especially in in-person class, that some of the work ethic is how what clothes you're wearing, how you're interacting with other people, being on time for class, all those things. So not all these things, you transfer over to the online course. Obviously, not the clothing and things like that, but how you get along with others. There's times that you'll be working with others to some extent, and or working with your instructor, administrators. So just as long as you treat everybody with respect, you shouldn't have any problems with anything. But just kind of wanted to mention that. There might be a couple areas that I kind of want to be a little more proactive on this work ethic grade, as far as if I haven't always. There's some people, if you miss classes, obviously if you miss 2 weeks, that's probably the max you can miss. You do one more, they're going to remove you from the course, and it's basically a week worth, right? So attendance is taken once a week. So if you miss 2, I'm going to mark you. It's going to lower your work ethic grade. Also, if not following directions, if you're continually not following directions, and sometimes that happens. Sometimes some students, I've had students that continuously won't do things, and I've been kind of lenient on the first year students. But if you're not putting things where they're supposed to be, you're not following the directions, I'm going to go ahead and mark them things, okay? But in the most cases, even things like that, it's not like you're going to does not meet it, right? Probably the worst case scenario, unless you do something really, really outlandish, the worst case could be needs improvement, but most of the time, even taking a little bit of points, you still could be within the meets expectations here, right? Just do want to, mention this is important as part of very important to Rankin's culture, that, and also when you have your transcript will also include a grade for this. So, it's possible that, if you did bad enough, if an employer knows how to look, they can actually see that you've had a low work ethic grade. Okay. So, all right, let's see what's next here. I do want to go over, next thing I want to go over here is, I want to go over career development and the web portfolio here. I need to look at something first. So I also want to go ahead and mention regarding career development and your web portfolio. I did send this out to my students from last semester, and I'll go ahead and also send this to new students that are in this course that weren't already, that you didn't have me already. So I'm wanting to point this out just because this is, very important. I hate and that's one of the things some of the other, from talking to the other instructors, they're, especially when you start getting to the second year and they're, here it is, they're finishing up their degrees and they don't have a web portfolio that looks good or has any significant content and all that. And so kind of really, and especially the job market right now is very challenging. So you really need to spend some time whenever you have some available time to work on a little bit of your own career development, and your web portfolio. So, like I said, I sent this out to all my students, and I think it's important for you to spend a little time whenever you can. I would create a spreadsheet and list different people that what company they work for, contact information, everything else. And like I said, even if they're not working in web development, software development, IT, or anything like that, there's still contacts. There's still contacts of companies because all companies have IT departments, right? They all have technology departments, right? And maybe some of them don't have IT staff here and it's in a different state, but they still have IT somewhere. They all still have a technology department that handles different things, right? So those would be more for remote type opportunities. But the better ones are usually the better opportunities are, I shouldn't say better, but the ones that are probably easier to get. I don't want to use the word easier either, but maybe there's more plentiful opportunities is when a company has a technology center, or if they're headquartered. If a company is headquartered in your town, right? If they're headquartered in your town, most likely the headquarters usually has the IT department. Not always. But there may be more opportunities, for that. But there might be some places where a company is headquartered in a different state, different city, but they have their technology department, so to speak. That most of the vast majority of their technology department might be in this city or somewhere, right, in our area. So things like that are really can be companies that you can target for jobs. And so if you know anybody at companies like that, them are the ones where you want to have those contacts, even if those contacts are not in the development area at all, right? So, and there's certain companies, and I know I was just out here, I was looking at, so out here in Columbia, Missouri, there's a veterans home loan company. They're headquartered in Columbia, Missouri. So, like one like that, that's a good company to pursue because they're headquartered there. So there should be more opportunities there, right? So, And then you've got like companies like MasterCard and so forth. So, always, look for those kind of companies and try to get contacts and try to make some network connections at all of those. Okay. Work on building your online presence, a LinkedIn profile. Start trying to reach out. You should, you can link, just like you do in other social apps. You want to make sure you connect to different people, right? And then as far as I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this. The other thing I guess I just really want to point out here too. Well, a couple different things. One, as far as your web portfolio, if you're not happy with what you've created, you don't have to stick with that. I know that you're trying to get through this course, and there's so much time in the day. But if you don't like how your web portfolio currently is, rewrite it. You can rewrite it, right? It probably didn't take you that long to write the first one, right? Obviously, you might have added some stuff. It might take you a little longer if you've added some content, but if you don't like what you have, rewrite it. And if you do, if you're happy with what you have, right, and you don't have to be too particular about it, but as long as you want to, if you're a developer, you need to look at that thing. You need to bring it up. Also, you need to bring it up on a web, on both the web, both in a browser, on a computer, laptop, whatever, and also on your phone. How does it look, right? Is it looking good on both, right? You need to evaluate what you've created and say, is this, do you feel good about this, right? Do you feel good about this? And if you don't, then either make changes or, like I said, if you don't like what you have, redo it. Okay. And the other thing I also want to mention, and like I said, everybody's, there's only so much time in the day, but besides just these courses, besides just this course, obviously you want to take care of this first, but if you have extra time, we all usually do have extra time. And I know a lot of people are gamers and stuff, and maybe if you could spend a little spend a little fraction of that gaming time and do a little bit more in some other area, it could be very beneficial. And you could just start building small little apps, right? Small little apps. You got GitHub Desktop. I mean, not GitHub Desktop. You've got your GitHub repository. You can just create some little small apps. Everything don't have to be this great big super app. Just maybe some small little apps that demonstrate some certain functionality. It's always great when you can go, when you can talk to an employer and talk about things that you did outside of just your classroom. They love that. They know you're into it. That you're involved and you're motivated. Very important things, right? So, okay, I won't harp on this anymore. Just kind of want to point out some things. But make sure you try to use a sliver of your time to work on career development and your web portfolio and et cetera. And like I said, if you get a little chance to, especially, maybe some of this little AI stuff you can learn too, where you can go ahead and make connections, using code to grab information, whatever, some little idea there, I wouldn't get involved in something too big. Small can be great, way to do things. Small little app. The bad thing about you getting something too big of an idea or whatever, is that, will you stick with it through the end? It's a good thing about small stuff. Small stuff, you're more likely to finish it, and finishing is more important than starting something and then quitting, right, and giving up on it, right? So, think about maybe ideas of some small little apps that you can create. All right. What do I want to talk about next here? All right, let's go through the syllabus here. Okay, so just let you know that syllabus, it's going to change throughout this course here and there. So one thing I had to do is, trying to, the syllabus, kind of copied over syllabus. That's what we generally do as instructors. And then we kind of make additions. So, I actually took the fall one, but, fall one was 80 days. So I'm having to pull some of that up a little bit, some of those lighter things, and try to combine them, right? It shouldn't be too bad. it happens in other courses as well. But just kind of had a. I'm kind of trying to. So I'm kind of still working on that. Some of the earlier weeks, things will be fine, but I might be making some changes to add a few things here and there so we can get it all done in 70 days. Okay. But like I said, this is a 14-week course starting today through 8/17. As far as contacting me, I do have this office phone, but it's not a real phone. It's a phone number, but it's not a real physical phone. It's just going to go to voicemail. And sometimes I haven't always received the messages that I got a new voicemail. So probably best not to actually use this. Just probably either one of two things. I probably actually should put my Discord thing here, but either email me here, or just send me a message on Discord. It's the best way to get a hold of me. As far as office hours, I have to, I'm kind of required to give office hours. But what I tend to, for an online course, there's times I've helped people at night and on weekends. Sometimes, I apologize if I'm not always available. I try to be available as much as possible. These are just the basic ones during the week, usually from 7 to 9 in the morning, and then from 12:30 to 2:30 in the afternoon. And then if, it's fine reaching out after, and many students contact me after these hours, and that's fine. But just, I'm not always going to be available, like, to help you right away. And especially if it's a Sunday night and all of a sudden you're panicking to get something done, I apologize that, I might not be around or available. And I don't constantly check my messages like every hour or anything. So, I do occasionally check them throughout the weekends and at night, but, sometimes I'm involved in different things and that. So, just wanted to point out, so that's why I always say, try to spread out your work through the week, because you don't want to get yourself in a situation where here it's Sunday and you can't commit something, and so then you get marked absent for that week because you can't commit something or whatever, right? Okay, so as far as the course book, there's not a course book for this. So here's the course description. This just talks about modern web applications must be scalable to handle thousands of concurrent users. And Node.js is a technology, which we know it's a runtime environment, like we were saying. It's a good fit for this environment because it enables developers to build lightweight, flexible, and high-performance web applications in popular JavaScript programming language. Right? So this course, students will learn how to build full-stack web applications with Node.js. I kind of think, probably best to say this in a different way. It's basically students will learn how to build web applications in a Node.js environment, really. But, no, it's very true that Node.js is, from a development standpoint, you're kind of using Node. You use you use it in different ways in a development environment, right? But when it's running, when an application's running and using Node, it's running. Usually, it's running for the backend services, right? So, but so Node, Express.js, and modern JavaScript syntax, you will learn how to persist, manipulate, and query user data with popular database management systems, which in this case, for this course, it will be MongoDB. And that is an actually NoSQL database, okay, as opposed to a relational database. So all of you in this course have already used, either in your C# or your .NET. If you took the second year .NET course, you already use relational databases, right? You already use relational databases. The C# had some databases. We had columns and rows, right? Whenever you hear relational databases, think columns and rows. When you hear NoSQL databases, it's something different than that, okay? And it's not one size fits all. It's a little more dynamic than that. There's different types of NoSQL databases. MongoDB is considered a document database, and we'll be getting into that really soon here in the next couple weeks. So as far as course level student outcomes, so you'll use CSS Bootstrap to design responsive websites. That will still be part of this. Obviously, you won't have as many assignments on that as you did in the web technologies course, but it's still going to be a little bit a part of everything you're building on the front end here. Okay, all your React code, right? But React's only a part of what you'll be doing. You'll also be using Express and your Mongo stuff, so that's not relevant for the Bootstrap and the CSS. Only your front end code, right? The React, CSS, Bootstrap, and your client side JavaScript, right? So I do want to point that out that I probably should have earlier is, when we talk about JavaScript, for many, many years, JavaScript was really only a client server technology that was used within the browser. But Node.js was one of the first out there to bring that JavaScript from the client onto the server, into the back end, so to speak, right? And so then JavaScript can now be used, thanks to Node.js, can be used on the back end part of this, right, on the server side, which is very beneficial, especially somebody who's very good at JavaScript. Now you can do JavaScript the front end and the JavaScript on the back end. Usually, traditionally, and it's still the case. Still, I'm not saying there's very robust applications that use different technologies. They don't use just because you're using some tech. You can still use Node and this and that for some things, but not for everything, right? So you could potentially still be using React on the front end, but on the back end you're doing something else. You could be using other programming languages. It could even be C# back there, right? And not that you can't still do that, right? It doesn't necessarily mean you have to be using only JavaScript on the back end, but for the applications we'll be building for this course, we will be using JavaScript both on the front end and on the back end. So we'll use Node.js, Express.js, and modern JavaScript syntax to build web applications. You'll develop web forms that post data to the server and retrieve results. We use a database management system. In our case, this will be the MongoDB to persist, manipulate, and query user data. And we'll also develop web APIs, application programming interfaces, and use JavaScript to update web pages dynamically. Okay. So now attendance. Let's go over policies a little bit. And I did want to bring up something that I probably should have mentioned at the top of the class. So sometimes there's situations where, for people taking this class, you got to, there's financial aid. There's times that financial aid, there's loans. Some people pay for it outright, but the courses have to be paid for, right, by the students and that. So sometimes if there's a situation, sometimes things aren't always in order, and I'll receive a list. I receive a list at the beginning of the class, at the beginning of the course when the course starts, that somebody's not authorized. Okay, and usually that happens every semester. And then if somebody for some reason is not authorized, then they cannot participate in the class until that has been resolved with the business office. Okay, and I have a scenario now that's all. And usually there's actually always one or two or whatever, and it's not necessarily their fault, but sometimes depending on when some things got figured out or whatever, it hasn't been completed yet. And so if for some reason you're on the not authorized list, you're not able to submit any work or go to any of the lectures or whatever. You can't really participate in the class until that gets resolved. So just kind of want to mention that. As far as attendance, for this online course, there's a maximum of 2 absences. If you get a third absence, you'll be removed from the class. The registrar's office will drop you from the class. This can be appealed. And let me know if you have any questions about that. But attendance is taken, and actually one of the students that hasn't had me before was asking me how the attendance stuff works. So that's why I'm kind of going over it. I know the students have already had me, but basically attendance is taken once a week, and it's taken the following Monday. So the Monday morning, if you turned in any work, you will be marked as present. If you did not turn in any work, you'll be marked as absent. So that's basically it, right? So that's why I always point out to try to stick to a schedule, and even if you don't have, if let's say it's Sunday and some emergency happens and you don't check something in, I'm not supposed to, as an instructor, I'm not supposed to cut you a break. Even though I know something bad happened, well, that you're supposed to be doing your work throughout the week, and then all of a sudden here's Sunday, something happens, and then you can't turn in your work, right? There's really no absences, excused absences to say, oh, okay, well, we'll go ahead and make we'll go ahead and allow it this time. It's usually there's no excused absences, right? So basically, if you for something happens on a Sunday and you can't get your work submitted by Sunday at midnight, then you're going to be marked as absent. Okay, so that's pretty much how that works, right? It actually says it right here: excused absences none. So this is on. That's how that works. So as far as this online, assume that all classes will always be held. And what that kind of, I guess, means, if there is a holiday, you'll still have assignments. When you decide to do your assignments, that's up to you as a student on an online class. If there is a holiday, I'm not going to have a lecture on that day. Okay, I'm not going to have a lecture on that day. I'll just move that to the next day. But what I would do, so let's just say coming up here is going to be Memorial Day. So Memorial Day is on a Monday. So what I will do is on that holiday, I will, in the morning, I will go ahead and make everything available. That don't mean you have to work on anything, but it will be available in the morning of that holiday. Okay, so, but I'm not going to have a lecture if it's a holiday. Okay, I'm only going to lecture on regular school, regular days, right? So then on a holiday week like that, when a holiday falls on a Monday, most likely the lectures will be Tuesday and Wednesday. Okay. Other than that, all the lectures will be Monday and Tuesday. Now I know probably in the first 2 semesters, especially maybe the HTML class, I didn't always have the lectures going full as long as I had those planned for. But this course has a lot of material. There's a lot involved here. It's very likely that these lectures are probably going to be pretty much the full time allowed for these. We'll probably use all the time. So just kind of wanted to point that out. So do you want to talk about academic honesty? You just need to make sure that you're working on your own assignments. Obviously, academic honesty and AI doesn't really fit together well. So, but, it's kind of one of those two-edged, it's the double-edged sword, so to speak, AI. AI is very important for you to know and understand and utilize as a developer, period, right? Very important. But on the other end of things, it's easy just to use AI to get through courses without really understanding the material, okay? And I guarantee that one of the first things employers is going to try to do is weed out people who don't understand the basics. If they're wanting to hire you, if they're wanting to hire you as a developer, a real developer, they're going to test your knowledge and skills in certain areas. And if you've kind of augmented that way too much with AI and didn't learn those basics, they're gonna figure that out. They all know that people are using AI for everything. It's not like you're gonna go in there and you should be straightforward and honest what you have used AI for. And in a lot of ways, they're probably going to want to know that you do know how to use AI, but they also want to know that you understand all the basics of the different programming languages, all the technologies used, and you can make things work, right? So just kind of wanted to point that out. It's a very difficult subject to deal with as far as, like I said, being a double-edged sword. It's very important for you to understand it and be able to use it as a tool, as a resource, but just using it to get your work done as quickly as possible, to get a grade, to pass a class, to get through a program. It's not going to benefit you in the end because they will uncover those things. They will uncover those things in interviews. So just want to point that out. Late work and retakes. So written test, there's only going to be a small set of written tests. Most of them, they will be done more in the earlier weeks than the later weeks. And they're basically a lot of the JavaScript review type stuff, okay? We have our first one that's due this Sunday, right? So I think there's five or six of them. But those cannot be submitted late, so you're going to have to get those done on time. All other coursework can be submitted late with a 10% penalty. Let's see here. You can resubmit assignment as many times as needed until it's 100% correct. But yeah, you're still going to have the penalty. 100% correct is one thing, but you're still going to have your 10% penalty, right? Probably a bad thing to say until it's completely correct, maybe, right? But you're still going to have your penalty. So you can keep on doing it over and over again, right? If you did something and you had a 50 on it and you did it again and got a 70, you can go ahead and do it again until it's correct, and then eventually you just get a 90% on it, would be 100% correct, right, for a late assignment. Now I do want to mention one thing. Well, actually two things here. But one thing that's very much different, a little different than what I've done in the past, and I'm changing this policy to be in line with the other instructors. But to submit a hands-on test late, if you're going to do a hands-on test late, you must successfully complete all the lab assignments that prepared you for that test. Okay, so there's lab assignments that the hands-on tests are going to be associated with those labs assignment, and that lab assignment usually is going to get you prepared for the hands-on test. So if you didn't do the lab assignment, and a hands-on test is actually worth more points, so probably a bigger percentage of your grade, the hands-on tests are. And you didn't do the lab, but you're just going to go ahead and do the hands-on test because you want to get the most points, but you didn't do the lab. You can't do that. You need to complete that hands-on test, right? You need to complete that lab before you submit a late hands-on test, right? And that's for a late one, okay? I'm not saying that you. So if you have a situation where you've got a lab and a hands-on test, and if you didn't do the lab, you could still turn in the hands-on test if you didn't do the lab, but you have to turn that hands-on test on time, right? If you didn't turn a hands-on test on time and you turn in the hands-on test late, you need to make sure that you complete that lab that's associated with that hands-on test before, right? All right. We've been going for a little more of an hour, so how about we go ahead and take a 5-minute break, and our Make a 10-minute break. Let's just make it, how about, let's make it 10:15, come back at 10:15 and we'll continue on from there. So the course grading for this course broken down in as for the final project, it's 10% of your grade. Hands-on test is 45%, labs will be 40%, and written test will be 5%. One thing I want to mention, especially for students that were in the web technologies, we had a lot of labs. We had a lot of assignments in that class, right? There's a lot less assignments, but the assignments are kind of harder, right? There's going to be more to these assignments, but there'll be less of them. So they're kind of worth more, each one, kind of, if you want to look at it that way, right? Since it's do want to kind of mention, it's, grades are weighted, right? So, a 10% final project grade can, dramatically change your grade, which I've kind of reviewed that before. I don't think I'll do that again today, but I might do it in the future just to kind of remind people, especially when we get towards the end, that grades are weighted, right? So written tests are 5%. Like I said, we only have like 5-6 of them. So when it's, that's all, you need to do good on some of those, right? If you don't do any of them, you're going to lose 5% pretty quickly there, right? It was different. We had, for the web technologies course, we have, for every chapter, we had a written test almost. So we had a lot of written tests there, so you could potentially not even do a couple of them and still be okay because there were so many to even things out. But here for the written tests, you're going to only have 5, I think it's 6 of them, 6 written tests. So that's 5% of your grade. So you want to make sure that you submit those, right? It does add up, you miss something here and there, it can really impact your grade. So, and just a review, here's the overall grade scale. 92.5 or greater is an A. B plus is 89.5. A B is 83.5 or higher. C is 80.5. Okay. A C plus. 74.5 for a C. So basically anything under 74.5, it's basically unsatisfactory, does not satisfy the course requirements, right? So these are not passing scores. Everybody knows that. So here's the basic workload table, right? So 80 hours of lectures. This comes out to about 5 hours a week, so to speak. That's kind of what we do here, right? About 5 hours a week. That's the goal. And plus, I'll have other videos on top of this too, here and there. So hopefully it'll be close to around the 80 hours worth of lectures. And then your others, your own class preparation here, right? Homework hours, got 80, reading hours, 40. I actually kind of like to see even a little more of that. Lab hours, 240. Okay. So there's 320. So kind of do want to mention, like here on this, real quick. So if we have, so this is how I kind of base things. So 320 divided by how many weeks? Okay, so typically by 16 weeks, it's basically about 20 hours a week, right? And that's why we always say like 20 to 25 hours a week is basically what you kind of need to do for these courses. And like I said, sometimes it could be more or less, right? Depending on different factors. But, obviously here for this summer's course, it's going to be a little bit more per week. So about 23 hours. So, pretty much figure about 25 hours a week, for the summer version, since it's a little condensed. We're still supposed to, be doing about the same amount of hours, because this is based on the credit hours, and so it's important for ranking to be making sure that people are this amount of contact hours is being used by the students. Okay, what else here? So as far as our tutor goes for this, I haven't heard who that's going to be. The tutor that we've had the last couple semesters has he graduated, so he's no longer available to be the tutor anymore. So kind of waiting to see how that falls out. So the kind of challenge here, since we're in a second, so you're in the second year. If the tutor hasn't already done this course, that's what kind of gets hard with the second year. If a tutor hasn't done this course, he's probably not going to be much help for you. So, but let me find out who that's going to be. I think they're still trying to figure out who the tutor is going to be, and if it's somebody who's already done this course, then maybe it'd still be beneficial for you. If not, then you either have me or any of the other instructors could also help as well. All right. So as far as the course schedule, so one thing I'm going to do a little less of I used to send a lot of emails every week, and I'd list all the lab assignments and everything else. So I'm probably, it was kind of redundant. It's in different places. Everything's in different. Is already available. It's already available. And so I wasn't going to be doing that, is telling you what assignments are due every week and that. You've got Inside Rankin. Inside Rankin's going to list your assignments that are due. The syllabus is going to list what assignment is due as well. And then also, many of these assignments are linked from the main page as well. So I'm probably not going to be I'll probably send an email explaining I'm not going to send as many emails out. Ain't that kind of funny? I'm going to send an email saying that I'm not going to send as many emails out probably there might be some times I send it out, but typically just figure every Monday and Tuesday we're going to have live lecture. Unless there's a holiday on a Monday, then it's going to be Tuesday and Wednesday. If something happens and for some reason that changes for whatever reason, then I will, I'll send you an email on that, right? But me sending the email about all the assignments that are due and all that, you guys have been through it. You can figure that out. It's all listed on Inside Rankin. It will be here within the syllabus. And like I said, we're going to actually look at the main page here in a minute, so it's also on the main page as well. I'm not going to go through all of this here on this syllabus here, but just going to kind of go through a few things here. So basically here's the assignments for week 1, which is complete the exam 1 theory. And so I'll be going through some of the logic, some of the theory that's needed to complete this tomorrow. Okay, so we'll be covering that tomorrow. I'll go through this lab a little bit as well. You will need to use Node. You won't be using, you will need to use Node to be able to run it. So you'll have to make sure you have Node installed if you haven't already for this lab. So we'll go through that real quick too for the students who don't have Node installed. You will have nodes there. We're not really going to be doing much with it, but you're just going to need Node installed to run it, even though we're not going to be using all the really Node functionality, so to speak, yet. That'll be starting next week. But there'll be this lab, and then also Inside Rankin, there's an assignment. It's basically a free code camp assignment. And I know in previous courses and previous sessions, not sessions, but previous courses, different semesters, they didn't really give the whole thing. I ended up giving you the whole thing, but I also gave you a link to a video of a guy who actually walks through the whole thing. So you can use that video to walk through that whole assignment. We'll go through this a little bit more tomorrow, but just kind of wanted to do a quick overview. Here are the 3 assignments. So basically, this is going to list all the days for each week, and I have like week 2 is always going to be highlighted, so you can see here. This is one I had to kind of put this together because, like I said, I had to kind of crunch some stuff because concise it a little, make it a little more concise because we're only doing 70 days. So I have this complete. Really, this lab is going to be really important, and I'll go through this next week. Really, kind of be really important for you to do this hands-on test. It's kind of so you're going to want to do this really before you do this. I'm gonna look through this a little more and see what's there. But so like in the early part of the week, you should try to get this lab done, and then maybe in the second part of the week, the hands-on test. And that brings up something that I also didn't mention earlier is I always tried, and I wouldn't mind doing it again because I think it worked out actually very well. Is having the hands-on test being done being due like in the middle of the week. I think that was very beneficial. It seemed like and when I say very beneficial, it seems like the students did it, and it also helped to force you to kind of make sure that you did something early in the week. And a long time ago, a class I had last summer, I didn't do that. And so everybody would wait until the end and start doing everything, and had a lot more problems, and people tended to, either didn't get their work done or were getting really bad grades. So, it really helped doing those hands-on tests in the middle of the week. That way people are going to do some work early and they're not procrastinating and waiting until the end. But the kind of way things fall out, it just seems to be more difficult for me to do that. So I have the hands-on test pretty much always due on a Sunday. I'm not saying that might be the case all the time, but here starting out, I have them due on a Sunday at midnight. So really nothing's due throughout the week. Everything's due on Sunday. Let's see how that works. I just have concerns about that because I think it just causes people to procrastinate more and don't start things until the weekends. So we'll have to see how that goes. All right. I'm not going to go through all of this thing. But we'll go down here kind of towards the end here a little bit, maybe. Let's go backwards. So here's the last day. So I was kind of crunching some things together. So do want to mention some of this is going to change. Some of this is going to change just to get everything ordered correctly and give you guys enough time to do things. But basically, the final project's going to be due all the way. The last day is 8/17. Final project's going to include doing a recording as well. And obviously, we ain't going to have to worry about that for quite a while. Did want to kind of mention just right now, I am going to be going to a development conference. So I will be gone on these days. You can still, I'll still check for messages, because I'll be probably bored a little bit here and there, just hanging out. It's just kind of the way these work. Lunch, that we have breaks and stuff sometimes. So I'll be checking for messages and stuff. But these 3 days, I'm going to be attending a development conference. But that's all, I guess. I really, there's no sense in me really going through all of these. But just in general, basically, you're talking about your couple days of lecture, and the rest is going to be lab days. And there may be some situations where I'm going to have to do some other small little lecture things that I might have live, or I might just record them. So we'll just see how that works out. So, all right. So like I said, though, the important thing is, don't, for the first couple weeks, I wouldn't get too far advanced, too far ahead, I should say, too far ahead. But basically, this is what, your assignments are going to be this week, right? But there might be some times you look, you start looking at quite a few weeks ahead of time here, it'll probably end up changing. The first few weeks it's probably going to be fine, right? But if you look too far ahead, some of that might end up changing based on how things fall with the course and how everybody's doing. So, all right, that's enough on that. Now let's go ahead and go to the main page. Let's close that. Okay, so it kind of went already over all this general information already in the syllabus. But here's kind of want to mention, there's a lot of content in here, a lot of links. And basically all of these sections, okay, you see all these sections, building web apps with Node, database design with Mongo, REST APIs, authentication, authorization, building your front end. Kind of notice all them. If we go over here to coursework, and yours is going to look different than mine because I'm an instructor. But let me just make all these small. As you kind of notice on that main page, it's pretty much going to follow. We don't do that one anymore, but it's going to pretty much follow what's here, right? So all those sections on the main page are basically going to be relevant to all these sections that are on the coursework page, right? And then for this week, here's your first assignments that are due this week. And obviously, like I said, it's going to look different. Me being an instructor, I have all those listed. You should only have these 3 listed, right? But just kind of wanted to point out that these things on the main page do align with the coursework sections and assignments. Okay, let's go back here. And so here's just the basics. You got your Discord server, your syllabus, setting up your environment, which I'm not going to, most of that stuff is you guys already have in place. There's going to be some things that don't need to be added but I'll go and discuss that here in a little bit. But there's that. One thing I will go ahead and do, there's this issue tracker project. And so this course, you're going to have a lot of different lab assignments, and not all of those lab assignments, but most of them are all going to be actually used all through you'll use them. You'll do your assignment, you'll get graded on that, okay? But when you do your final project, all of those labs are also going to be a part of your final project, okay? Your final project is going to be kind of a cumulative, so to speak, right? And so that's why if you did not do a lab, it's going to be missing in your final project, right? So if, obviously you could do it late and get it to a point it needs to be, so you'll have that included, right? And when you do get to that end, even the labs that you did, you'll have to enhance them. There's going to be changes that you'll need to make for the final project, okay? Because there'll be things that you learned when you did those labs at the beginning. There's things that you didn't know how to do, and you'll learn to be able to do those things through this course. So that functionality, you'll have to change that code for the final project, if that makes sense. So real quick here, let me click on this. And this is actually talking about the issue tracker project, okay? And so what an issue tracker is, if you don't know, it's okay. An issue tracker, and also sometimes people call them bug tracker. So when you've got an error, as far as some software is concerned. So all companies, all development projects you work on, they are going to be using some type of software or another to track problems with the code, reported errors with the code, and that, right? Them are called issue trackers, bug trackers. And them are used in a development environment, even before something would go to a production environment and a development environment. And they're also used all the way through you go to production and even after production. And when you go to production, there'll be errors that are reported, maybe by users, maybe if you've got a public web application, public web application that some user in a different country could report an error, right? But they're probably not using your software. They're reporting something some other way, maybe on the phone. Maybe you have a form, that they fill out, and maybe you have some back-end processes that I'm just making this up, okay? Have some back-end processes that ends up getting this bug into your issue tracker or your bug tracker, okay? Not that we're doing all of that, but just trying to talk about how a bug tracker, an issue tracker can be used, right? It can be used throughout the life cycle of your project, right? And the life cycle is even, continuing after it's already in production, right? Life cycle of a project pretty much lasts forever. There's a lot of times you might complete, when an application gets completed, there may be later on, they say, hey, we want to add new functionality. Well, you're going to, you iterate through a bunch of different processes to add new code. And so then you'll have new bugs that are found on that new code and goes through that whole process as well, okay? But an issue tracker, bug tracker, that's what it is. It's about reporting issues, documenting issues with code, and those could be of different kinds of problems, and we'll discuss what that is later on. But that's what an issue tracker is. And there's people out there that really push the idea of creating this being a great way to get a job, because building a bug tracker, understanding it, right? And in most cases, though, I do kind of want to mention you get a job. Most likely, they didn't build their own. Some companies I've worked on projects before where they had their own internal mechanisms or internal applications for that. But generally, I would say most companies use something that's already established, called off-the-shelf product, a software product. They're using something that's already created, right? But but it's still possible. Like I said, because I've really just one place I can remember that I used something that they created their own little bug trackers that they used. Okay, so. But most of the time it's off-the-shelf product. But this is kind of just showing you an idea of how you can create one yourself, right? How you can create one yourself. Okay. So you can read through this later. We're not ready right now. And I will refer back to this later on, okay? And also here, and I will mention, since we're talking about this, so here's the final project rubric. I'm not going to go through this whole thing here because we don't need to right now. But as you can see, here's these different labs. So all these different labs are things that you've already done, that you have already done, that you will already have done by the time you get to the final project, right? But these will be part of that. And you'll have to go in there and make changes. You'll have to implement things that you did not have implemented. You'll have to change things, and etc. Okay? You had to add additional functionality for the final project. But basically, the point I'm just trying to make more than anything is the labs that you're going to be doing throughout this course are going to be used all the way through your final project. Okay? All right. Here's just a link for setting up to GitHub Desktop. So one thing here, and you have different options. I kind of already mentioned that, and I'll probably just spend some time really dealing with this a different day than today. I was going to, but I'd show you how to use all different options. Not all different. There's multiple options, but the ones that we kind of have designated for this course would be, using either GitHub Desktop or using Tortoise Git or using Git command line. So I will get something together for you guys for each one of those. And many of you already probably pretty skilled with the GitHub desktop because you've already used that. And I know some students have just been uploading stuff directly from their computer, which they may be able to get by doing that here and there within the course, so to speak. But that's not going to work well when you get a job at a company. You need to learn how to use Git and use Git different tools that are available for that, as opposed to just trying to upload files. It's not the best way to do that. Just wanted to point that out. But I will go ahead and get something together for you guys on these on GitHub desktop, the Tortoise Git and the command line. Give you a list of, like for the command line, I'll give you a list of commands if you want to just do it that way. I suggest you try to work. I highly recommend trying to use Git at the command line level. And we'll go through that because it's just beneficial, because there's a lot of things in development projects that you use to run things. You need to do a lot of command line stuff. You need to do stuff for cloud. You need to do stuff for Node and that. So there's a lot of need for command line skills, and so I think it's kind of worthwhile doing that. And obviously, you can use any three of those you really want, but I just recommend trying to get familiar with using the command line stuff. And basically, here's the recorded lectures for this, which is just going to be this one here for now. So here's our building web apps with Node and Express. So there's some different materials here. And I'm not going to go through every single one of these. And there might be a few things that are a little bit dated. Okay. Obviously, this looks good. He's using the latest module type ways, the MJS files and that, and is using imports and stuff like that. The later, the more recent versions of that. Okay. So, but these are things that are basically replacing what you would have in your book, right? And then obviously, besides just Node.js, you can go, Node.js has a website as well, and for documentation and tutorials and everything else, so you can use that as well. And some of this I will use for my lecturing as well, for some of these lecturing, so you'll have all of that here as well. And then here's, as you can kind of see, for each section, here's the lab assignments. So this is the lab assignment that's due coming up here the end of this week by Sunday. So here's the very first lab assignment. And here's the second lab assignment. So this is within that section. You're not doing this one till next week, but it's part of this section, so to speak, right? It's part of that section. So here's, I'm just pointing out, so then here's, spend some time looking through this. You got references, quick start. So when we get to each section, I would come in here, and I'll point this out in the future as well. I'd come through here and go through all of these, okay? I'd go through all of these and see what's beneficial. But please spend some time doing your own reading on your own to learn some things. Don't try to just wing everything. I understand it. I do wing things a lot myself, so I understand. But try to spend some time reading things here and there. I do that all the time. So, and then even here's some refresher stuff on HTML, CSS, React, intro, etc. Okay, like I said, all of the labs are listed here as well. Obviously, you don't want to try to start working on something until we kind of get there, but they are listed here. All right. Let's see what I wanted to get to next. Okay, kind of talked about the final project a little bit. Okay, let me talk about. So what I want to do during this course, and I'll be using a lot of what I'm doing. I'll be using as an example for the lectures when we get to that point. Is I'm going to be doing my own project, and so I'm still working through this. So what I'm wanting to do with this project is develop something that can be used by you guys. That's one thing. And another is I want to kind of do this in a way, it's not going to be exactly like what you're going to see in a real world environment, but, I just kind of wanted to, want to fold in some things where you can kind of get an idea how things are done. Like, because usually, you have kind of like a requirements document, and when a project starts, usually you're going to have like a high level requirements. Okay, these are the kind of things we want to achieve with this application, right? And I'm going to talk about that a lot more in the future. I don't want to get caught up too much in that, but there's some processes that companies go through for that. Okay, and there's an idea of what's called waterfall. Is where you come up with all of the requirements, everything you want this application to do, all the little intricate little details ahead of time. That's called waterfall. Okay, that's an approach. And it is important for you. You don't have to understand this today, but by the time you get done with this program, you should understand some of these concepts because they're very relevant. I guarantee all the developers out there, in the real world, understand what waterfall is and what agile is, and then agile is a different methodology, a different way of doing things, where you may not even know all the requirements at the beginning, and it's become very popular. Agile methodologies become very popular because a lot of companies are I don't even say companies. A lot of people who are, especially if you're working with a client. So you might be working for building an application that's been started, or when I say started, it's envisioned by someone within your company, right? That's kind of like an internal application where somebody in your company say, hey, we want to build an application that tracks some products and gives us some reports and do this, maybe something specific to that company where there's not some, with some specific type requirements that they can't find, like off the shelf type products that already exist to do this. And they want some customized software built to do something with something in their company, right? And these are kind of like internal type applications that a company comes up with, right? And sometimes they don't know exactly what they want to do, right? And it even is more of a case when you've got an outside client, because outside clients sometimes haven't thought about a lot of this stuff. Maybe inside an organization, they probably have a process for a lot of this stuff, but outside, you work with outside clients, then they may not have a good idea. Well, we know we want to do this and this and this, but we don't know everything we want to do, right? And when you don't really have that, you can't, if you can't figure that all out at the beginning in a waterfall type thing, then that's not, waterfall would be a bad type one to use. You're better off with a agile, where agile is you can kind of flush out the requirements as you go. You say, okay, we know we want this. Okay, so let's do that. And then as you do this, you keep on going through this application and adding more functionality. Oh, well, you know what? We don't really like that. We did think we liked that. We don't. So you remove that. You add something else. And so you're constantly changing. You're iterating through this multiple times this process to get the product that you want, the application you want. Okay, and there's a big benefit in that, doing it that way, because sometimes what happens, the bad thing is about waterfall is you do everything up front, and then you spend all this time building it, you turn it over to client, then they say, well, that's not really exactly what we were hoping for, or even, it might be exactly what they said they wanted, but that's not what they thought. What they told you what they wanted and what they actually got. It's hard, and maybe that's not what they thought they were going to get, right? Or once they seen it, they said, well, we thought we wanted that, but then we didn't really want that, and so. So an agile type process is going to work a lot better in those cases. Okay. Sorry, I kind of went off on that a little bit, but and we'll talk about that a little bit more in the future. But what I kind of did here is I just created kind of a high level requirements document for this this application that I'm going to build. Okay, and as you can see, it has different sections here. It has like a user management section, practice quiz functionality, performance tracking and results analysis. Okay, and administrator function for content generation. I'm also going to be using AI as part of this as well. And then here's some general requirements. So I'm sure I'm going to make some changes to this, and I'll do that. But as you know, on here on this requirements document, it kind of has this for each section. So for user management, it has For my quiz functionality, it's just QZ, etc. Tracking and analysis, TR. Just a way to refer to these different requirements. Okay, but this is kind of my high level requirements document. But I'm going to break this down to other kinds of requirement documents, and I'm going to build the code from there. Okay, and then I'll be building the code from there. So it's not like people just go out and build something. When you go to work at a company, it's not like, okay, you guys just go build something, or we need to build a quiz application, just go do it, right? So it doesn't work that way, right? So there's all these requirements, and and also I want to kind of get into who's involved in a project. You have project managers. You have different roles within that project. Also, you have what's called a business owner. Now, business owner doesn't mean that person owns that business, but a business owner is someone who is responsible for that. Okay, is responsible for that application. Okay, and so maybe like I had that example of maybe there's some department in an organization where they want to build some application to track products, and they have some customized stuff they want to do. And so there's going to be a person who is kind of designated as the business owner, right? So that's the owner. And when I say the owner, they're responsible, right? So that's kind of the business owner in that circumstance, right? Whereas you got a client on outside, it's going to be different, right? But there's different roles within when a project happens, right? And then you have what's called stakeholders. So what's a stakeholder? So when I build this, I'm going to build this application as an instructor. I'm going to build this application. Who's my stakeholders? Well, I'm a stakeholder, right? If you're using it, if you're watching my videos on this, you're kind of a stakeholder just in watching the videos. If you end up using this quiz application I create, you're obviously a stakeholder there. Who else is a stakeholder? It's anybody who could be impacted by this application, right? Let's just say, for instance, let's say, you live at your parents' house and they want you to move out. Well, they're kind of a stakeholder too. So if you end up using this application and you build your skills and then you get a job and so you can move out of your parents' house, in a way, your parents are actually a stakeholder, right? So stakeholder can be anybody who's impacted by something. So it can be very interesting in the world of project management, right? But like I said, I'm going to go ahead and this is going to be part of what I'm going to be doing through this course, building this thing. But I'll also be talking about some of the ins and outs of how a project's created and the different people that are involved as well. Okay. You know, you have testers and everything else, right? So, all right. I guess I've went on that one long enough. All right. Let's see. Setting up your environment. That's the next thing here. So here we've got, I'm not going to like walk through all of this just for the fact that almost everyone has almost all of this. Everybody already has Discord. Everybody has access to the classroom, right? Now this one here, I am waiting on. This had a link. I replaced the link with this. Waiting for coupon from Google. So we're waiting for this. And so this will be so that you can, we're going to deploy our web app. We're going to deploy our final project, all right, to the cloud. Not that you, and I'm okay with you using other other providers. There's other options out there, but I'm gonna have things set up for you to, because there's like coupons, coupons, so it's free for a certain period of time, so that you have, as a student, you'll have to fill out some stuff on that. But I'm still waiting from them to get basically the link for you to do this. But this final project, another thing is when we go ahead and deploy this thing out to Google, we want to do this earlier than later. This isn't, because actually one of the last class that took this course was back in the fall, and a lot of the students didn't do it like throughout the course. Throughout the course, they just waited till the end, and then many of them didn't get it deployed, and they lost some points because it wasn't deployed. So we'll talk about that later. Some of these early assignments won't be relevant, but I'll work on, once we get this in place, I'll work on each of you getting it deployed out there successfully, and then it's your responsibility to continually to get it deployed out there. It doesn't take much. It's some command line arguments that you can just we do right from Visual Studio Code to get that deployed out there. Okay. Now you should though, go ahead and install this SDK. So go ahead and get this installed, and you can get this installed out there. I believe you should be able. Let me know. I know you can download it, and that you're not going to be able to set everything up because you don't have that yet. But I believe you should be able to have it. You can download it and get it installed. Shouldn't be a problem. And then here's basically just creating a GitHub account, which you already have, so you can continue to use your GitHub account. Obviously, though, this is one thing you do want to do, is you want to use this classroom. So you want to click this link, get redirected, select your name, right? And so I can see that I don't think anyone has done this yet. So this is something you do want to do, and make sure that you use the right classroom. This is the classroom just for this course, right? So basically, you don't have to do these other things because you already have it. You just log into GitHub, click on the classroom, or it doesn't really matter. You can start by clicking this, and if you're not logged in, it's going to force you to log in. But you just want to join the classroom, right? And then after joining the classroom, then you want to go ahead and clone your repository onto your computer, right? It really doesn't say that here, but you want to do that, which you've all done this before. And these are just things that you've already done as well. You already have Git. I'm sure most of you already have Notebook++. If you did, this is optional, but I use it. I use it often. You don't have to. And here's Tortoise Git. So and this is option as well. This is only for Windows machines. I don't know if it'll work on Mac or not. You really should be using a Windows machine, and you, you can run into some problems in this program with Mac, but I know some students do use Macs. So you use TortoiseGit if that's optional for you. I can go through it. I'm not going to force you to do it. It's just another option that you can learn how to use that as well. And I'll go through some basic functionality on using TortoiseGit, and like I was mentioning earlier. GitHub Desktop. Obviously, I'm sure that almost everybody on here, I know everyone that already had me either has, I don't know if regularly using it, but they did get this at one point in time. And then obviously Visual Studio Code. You all have that. There might be a couple different plugins here. Another thing I will go ahead and go through later is the GitHub Copilot. There's the GitHub Student Developer Pack. So you can go ahead and sign up for that, that you can use GitHub Copilot, basically the AI assistant, and you can go ahead and use that for free. Being a student, I'm an instructor. I can't get the student pack, but this is for students, and I'll go through that later. Let's see what else is down here. Install Node.js. So yep, this will be important. Make sure that you install Node if you don't have it already. I know that the students in my previous course, Web Technologies course, already have that. But if you don't have that, make sure you install Node. All right. So what else did I want to talk about here? AI a little bit. Let's talk about AI a little more. So, different ways AI can be used, all right? Integrating AI into this course, it's going to help prepare you for the modern tech landscape. Many people are using it, and a lot of this usage is really depending on company. Depends on what company you work for. Not every company wants you using it, but other companies are embracing it. It all depends on the policies of that company. So you can't always assume that every company that you go work at are and there may be certain AIs they want you to use, and certain ones they don't want you to use, right? Basically, we're talking about large language models, right? There'd be certain ones they want you to use, certain ones they don't want you to use. And there might be some organizations companies or projects that they don't want you to use it at all. But all in all, I say most companies are using it in different ways. One way, like I said, as an assistant with coding, okay, and you can use. I'll go ahead and we'll go work through the whole GitHub Student Developer Pack later. But Copilot basically acts as an AI pair programmer. It's someone who's helping you program, helping you through the code, right? So we'll go through how that works and how you can use that successfully within the IDE, Visual Studio Code. Okay, but that's one way, is integrating it with Visual Studio Code or other code editors as well. But Visual Studio Code is has become very, very popular. And then also this idea of AI agents, right? So AI agents can automate specific tasks. So actually, for what I was going to go ahead and do for my instructor project that I'm working on, is I'm going to be planning on using an AI agent to go ahead and create some interview questions, right? I'm not going to just use like ChatGPT or something and cut and paste the interview questions. I want to do it in a more dynamic way, okay? So I haven't really thought through all of it, how I'm going to do it, but I'm plan on using AI agents, which is very probably this is like, going to be like the year of AI agents. Everybody's talking about AI agents now, and AI agents are basically autonomous. You just give them a task and they go complete it. All right, they'll have a set of different tools that they could use, and so forth, and they'll just go ahead and complete it. Okay. So I was planning on integrating that so I can show you how to do that. I'm not sure, like I said, maybe there might be some instances where we, early on here on this course, I don't see us, places in your code that it's going to be beneficial for you. We still have to kind of get our basic coursework done, but maybe later on in the course we can kind of find some ways to integrate maybe an AI agent or something like that. But I will do it in my thing, and so I can go ahead and demonstrate and show you that. And then it'll be a while till I get to that point as well. But I also wanted to kind of go ahead, and that's probably going to be some separate videos I'm going to do just on AI in general, just like an overview of AI, different ways AI can be used. Like here we're talking about assistant, or we're talking about AI agents is a different way. And so just beyond coding, AI offers various other benefits. You can use automated tools for code reviews, generating running test cases, testing processes. There's all kinds of ways to use AI nowadays. So not that we can cover everything, but I just wanted to give you an introduction into it. And we're probably going to use some framework. I'm probably going to use some framework. There's this LangChain LangGraph framework. I think I'm going to probably use that just to show you how those things work, give you a little introduction to that. Hopefully you can play with that a little bit, maybe add that to your resume. It could be very beneficial for you. So we will be using AI in this course, obviously with the AI Copilot. But like I said, it's very important for you to make sure that you're just not using AI in a way that bypasses your opportunity to learn the basics in this class. And if you do that, you're just really hurting yourself, because I guarantee they don't want somebody who just say, well, I know how to use ChatGPT to create this, or any other large language models, right? You got Gemini. There's all kinds of other ones as well out there that are people you're using. And, just going into an interview and then, from that perspective, it's probably not going to turn out well for you. Unless that's all they want you to be able to do. In most cases, that's not the case. They're wanting you to understand the concepts and understand how things work and fit together, right? Now, a lot of people talk about AI replacing things, but, there's also a lot of people saying, well, that's not going to be the case either. And actually, there's a lot of people saying that AI is going to actually create more jobs than it's ever going to take away. But I don't want to get into a debate in that area. We don't really know what's going to happen long term. But, obviously, I always believe if you're a person who has technical skills and you hone those skills and you use those skills, you're going to have opportunities out there. Okay. You're going to have opportunities out there. So things could, and I think a lot of the job market stuff now is more other related issues than it is AI related. Okay. It's more the tariff stuff and just uncertainty. We still have high interest rates. High interest rates always hurt things, especially smaller companies hiring. So there's a lot of factors out there that's impacting hiring right now. So hiring is kind of a little bit of a challenge, okay? But like I said, as far as from an AI perspective, I truly feel that as long as you're constantly learning, trying things, building things, show companies that you're excited, you're enthusiastic, that you're motivated, there will be job opportunities for you, okay? So just don't want to scare anybody in that area, because I know, there's all kinds of things you can read about or see about, see that, there's, well, they basically say AI is going to replace all jobs in every sector, but this kind of sectors, it takes some knowledge and some skill and some abilities. Whereas, some jobs really don't, like if your job is just to maintain some spreadsheet of data and that, which there's a lot of people who that's what they do, right? And, they're adding things to spreadsheets, stuff like that. That's very easy to automate, right? And a lot of programming stuff is easy to automate, but not everything is easy to automate. And people skills and people's intellect ability and creativity and all those things come into play in the software development as well, which can make you really stand out. Okay. So as far as where we're at here, I'm not going to start on the JavaScript basic theory thing till tomorrow because we only got about 15 minutes. So I guess we'll go ahead and wrap things up unless somebody's got any questions about anything. All right, looks like that's about all I have for today. So go ahead and have a good one. And the next video will be about go back through some basic JavaScript concepts. And it'll be a review for some people, but there'll also probably be some new concepts or some things that you might not have grasped the first time in the web technologies course. But it'll be probably a little more in depth than we've done already. So we'll go ahead and start, and we'll cover that in the next video. Thanks a lot. Have a good day.